I am on a filming streak. You just don't even know. Earlier, I filmed my first book review Friday in a very long time, and then I ended up changing my outfit because I went outside and it was still too cold, even though I'm going to wear like a different jacket. But this is irrelevant information, but I had just filmed a haul, and I figured I would go ahead and film for this series. So where we left off in the last book review is I was discussing the first series that then leads to the result of this. And I wanted to just make them two separate videos because essentially it's two separate stories that are intertwined together, if you will. So if you are watching this video and you have not read this series first, then I'm going to go ahead and set this warning that I cannot speak to this series without giving this series away. So if you're not interested in having that spoiled and you want to read this series, go check out my first book review, although don't go too far into that as well because I do give away a lot of things that happens, but this is your chance now to kind of leave this video if you don't want to have it spoiled. Otherwise, if you're still here, it's because you don't care or because you've already read this and you want to find out what I think about it. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into this. I'm going to give a high-level overview, and then you can opt out to leave after that, and then I'll dive into what I really feel about these books. So the overview is that this is an extension, as I mentioned, to these series. So Prince Maxen and America get married, they become king and queen, and this is their firstborn. Oddly enough, their firstborn was a twin, but the firstborn happened to be a girl. So essentially, this is the flip reversal role of her going through the selection series, just like her dad, King Maxen, went through. So that's what this is all about. So it's like, this was the Bachelor version, and this is the Bachelorette version. Same situation. They are pulling from men, essentially. I wouldn't call them boys, I suppose, but boys or men, whatever, from their country, but the caste system is still attempting to resolve. But yeah, so that's the overview, and now I'm going to get into this as if you've already read this book. And as I was mentioning in my last review, I was not happy with the way that Kiera Cass kind of wrote the main character. So the main character in this book is Princess Edelyn. Edelyn? How are you guys saying it? I'm saying Edelyn. It says 20 years ago, her mother won the crown. Now Princess Edelyn is ready to find true love. So this is the first series of that, and then this is the final. So Kiera Cass didn't even turn this into a 3-book series like her father. She turned this into 2 books. This is essentially the end, at least. That's kind of how she left it off. It didn't appear that she was going to be writing a 3rd extension to this. If that's the case, I haven't heard. If you know, comment down below. So the problem that I have with this whole series is that the way Kiera Cass wrote Edelyn's personality is almost somewhat identical to King Maxen's father, whom I discussed in that first review. And if you've read these series, it's like, how can you even like that man? You know, he physically abused Maxen, and he was just not a good king. And the total opposite of Maxen. I mean, the people love him in the book. And the way that she writes Edelyn is like the same personality as her grandfather. And I'm like, how is that likable, to be honest? I mean, she ends up softening her personality, obviously, because she finds love, but it just wasn't a natural flow of that, to be honest. I felt like she just went from one moment she was hard and the next moment she was soft. And it just didn't seem like a natural progression of her personality at all. And I just wasn't buying it, to be honest. Now, did like reading this because I got to like read more about Maxen and America, who are her parents. It is very sad because if you've read this, then you know that America gets, she ends up having a heart attack. So that pushes Edelyn to take the crown sooner. And she is very much tied to her twin brother, who up and leaves like out of nowhere to go get married to a princess from France. And then she does another twist some way, somehow, and Edelyn ends up with someone so unlikely that it's great. I love who Edelyn ends up with. I'm not gonna lie. At first, I was disappointed and I was like, no. I wanted Edelyn to end up with Kyle. I know that's the obvious, that's the predictable, because Kyle is the son of Marley, and Kyle grew up in the castle, and they have this love-hate thing, and it was bizarre because Kira wrote these two characters as if they were going to end up together, and so I think she did that to plot twist and shock you because she needed that shock value, I suppose, but I think she did wrong, in my opinion, by doing that. I felt like she got us to fall in love with the idea of Kyle. At least I did. I'm going to speak for myself. And you thought, oh, they're going to find some way to like be together. And then she throws someone so unlikely, which would have been great if she just wrote that flow differently. Because essentially, Edelyn didn't like any of the boys. And she only barely tolerated Kyle. And then next thing you know, she's like pledging her love to this random guy that you didn't even see coming. And it's like, what? She's grumpy and she's kind of rude, and all of a sudden you want me to believe that she's had a change of heart? It's just, I don't know. It's exhausting. And then the Lady Bryce thing was kind of like, it was another thing that I think she wanted to throw in there, but I don't think it was really needed. But essentially, Lady Bryce is like King Maxon's like right hand. But it turns out the whole time that she was like his half sister, I believe. Getting this right. But I didn't really get that. I was very confused by that. It was like her publishers were forcing her to get the story out, and she was just like trying to force things into here. That's how I personally felt. And honestly, I almost didn't read this. So this is the final book. I almost didn't read it because I was so off put by her abrasive personality. It was like, it was like she wrote Edelyn to have more of a masculine role than a feminine role, but then she like loved fashion. It was just, I'm not saying you can't be masculine and not love fashion. It just, for me, with all the other different like random elements for me, it didn't piece together as well and as natural that I think it could have. Yeah, I don't honestly know what to say about it. So now I'll get into who she obviously chooses, which is Eric, essentially, right? But his real name is like Echo, is the translator of one of the selection boys. So one of the selection boys doesn't speak English, and he brings a translator who ends up being the one that she chooses. And I get I get the excitement of that plot twist because she ends up choosing someone that wasn't there for her to begin with. And I loved his personality. But I just like, what I don't understand is she saves like only 2 or 3 chapters of forming Edelyn's relationship with Eric or Echo or whatever. I don't know what his freaking name is up in here. That is, she only saves like 2 or 3 chapters where Edelyn finally realizes that she is in love with Eric and they develop their relationship that way. But then it's like, and then that's odd because they go from being friends and then all of a sudden they're in a closet kissing, and it's too black and white for me. I know, isn't not coming across that I'm like really irritated by these series, but that's how I felt reading it, to be honest. I mean, you should definitely read it if you want to kind of get like a finalized version of the selection series, and maybe you'll have a totally different feeling than I do because it's all perception, right? So, but in the end, she wasn't going to choose Eric because she technically couldn't. So she was going to force herself to choose someone, to choose Henry, because she didn't want to force Kyle to live in the castle. And I'm just like, oh, and then she goes running to Daddy, can I choose Eric? And he's like, yeah, go for it. You never had to have anyone's approval. And she's like, okay, Eric, it's you and me. I'm just not buying it. Mm-mm. I think where it went wrong for me was her personality. Honestly, it just, and then the rest just dominoed effect to confusion for me. Ultimately, though, I have to say I'm happy that she ended up with him. Although I really was pulling for Kyle. I don't know who else pulled for Kyle. And then, like, you didn't get a wedding out of it. You know, at least in the one, you kind of got the visual of her walking towards Maxon and his, like, sort of reaction, and I kind of expected the same here, but you don't get that. I'm not saying she had to do that. I'm just saying I would have liked that at least. It was also hard for me to keep up with a lot of the guys. It was a lot easier for me to keep up with the girls from this side just because I think that she had more time to develop each girl's personality, whereas here I don't think she spent that much time. She would only mention one guy here and there, and I would completely forget who he was, and it was just very odd because she was not spending time with them, whereas in these books she was describing Maxon spending time with so and so and so and so, and here you really didn't get that much. She just kind of preferred to spend her time with Kyle and really no one at all. So for me to sit here and talk about the boys in this selection is hard because I don't remember any of them. They weren't memorable to me except for Kyle and Henry. That's it. And then there was one. The one that ended up being more into another guy than her. But I did love her relationship with her brother because I have an older brother and we're very close in age, and I just love how she described their relationship. They were very close, and so I liked that. I will say that I'm glad I read them, but I wouldn't read them twice. You know what I mean? Unless it's like 10 years from now and I'm really bored. But it's not a book that I'm like, oh, I have to read it again. No, it's not that for me at all. But otherwise, that's pretty much it. I know this book review was somewhat shorter than the other one because I had so much to say about Maxon and America's relationship. But so give this video a thumbs up if you like this video. Comment down below and let me know how you felt about this. This is where this is going to get interesting. I really want to know how you felt about this book, and if you share my same kind of feelings and maybe you were kind of confused or you weren't buying it, seemed a little forced, like let's plot twist and throw in the translator and force their love. It just was, there weren't enough moments of them two together for it to make sense to me. The way that Maxon and America kind of like grew together. That's just how I feel. Comment again, let me know what your thoughts are and who you wanted her to be with. Let me know if you wanted her to be with Kyle or someone else, or if you wanted her to be with Eric from the get-go. I kind of think I saw it coming like a chapter before-ish, and I was kind of like, no. I remember thinking, no, she has to be with Kyle. But she wrote Eric at least somewhat decent enough for me to not ultimately hate this like combination. So that's pretty much it. I mean, if you, like I said, if you love the series, then read that. But otherwise, I personally wouldn't buy them. I should have just rented them from the library, and but that's that. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!